Hi, I'm Poppy Webber. I'm a qualified saddle fitter for the Society of Master Saddlers with over 12 years saddle fitting experience. I thought I'd take advantage of the Corona lockdown to make some quick tip videos for you about saddles, saddle fittings and anything tack related. If you're interested in these videos and you have any ideas of things that you would like to see, then please comment below and I'll do my very best. As some of you may know, I'm a monthly columnist for Absolute Horse magazine. Now, number one, Absolute Horse magazine is fabulous. It's free of charge. It's available in all your local tack shops if you live in the east of England, and it's also available to anyone to download online free of charge. So once you've finished watching this video, pop along to the Absolute Horse website and find their latest issue. In the May edition of Absolute Horse magazine, my column is all about stirrup leathers, which I promise you is far more interesting than it sounds. Let's talk about why stirrup leathers stretch. They can stretch for a multitude of reasons. One of the reasons can be simply because people get on and off from the ground. So if you put your left stirrup down, you get on from the left, there's that moment of suspension where all of your weight is in that left stirrup as you hoik yourself up and over. That alone can stretch your stirrups. For that reason, we recommend that every time you clean your tack, you swap the leathers over from one side to the other. So if you do get on from the ground and find continually that your left stirrup stretches, then just swap them over every time you clean your tack. Another reason could be that you as a rider are wonky, or your horse is wonky and it's pushing your weight to one side, in which case again there's more weight going down one leather than the other and it can stretch. Again, simply swapping your leathers over every time you clean your tack can really help with that. But why does leather stretch so easily? Because when you think about it, leather is skin and skin stretches. It has the ability to really stretch. For example, when I was pregnant, my stomach went from being a normal size stomach to looking like I swallowed a hippopotamus. It was massive. And my skin allowed my stomach to stretch like that and then come back down kind of almost to how it was before. Oh, thank you, Maddy. Speaking of being pregnant, there's a child. So leather is skin and skin stretches. Now, when we as saddlers make stirrup leathers, we make them from something called a butt of leather. A butt of leather sounds hilarious, like it's a cow's bottom, but actually a butt means a side of leather. So a butt of leather is literally half a side of a cow, and that's what we make your stirrup leathers out of. I'm just going to go and grab a butt of leather now so I can show you. So here I have a butt of leather. Can you see? This has had some taken off it already, which is why the top is quite smooth, because I've already made stirrup leathers out of this. So on a butt, the side of a cow, there are lots of things to take into consideration when using the leather. The first of all is that the back of the cow, so the top of the butt, is much thicker leather than the stomach of the cow. If you think of your pet dog, for example, when it lays on its back and you tickle it on its tummy, the skin on its tummy is quite thin and quite delicate, whereas the skin on its back is a little bit thicker where the hair is. So because of that, a leather butt has different thicknesses of leather in it. So at the top here, we have some quite thick leather, and if you can see, and at the bottom here, whilst it's still decent leather, it's a little bit thinner and it's a little bit more sort of bendy and flexible. So anything that requires a great deal of strength for safety purposes, then we will use the top of the butt. So we have a little cutting thing and we go whooing across the top and we cut off a strip along the top, and that gets used for the things like girth straps and stirrup leathers. So when your stirrup leathers are made, they're made from that butt, we cut off a strip, and then we make the next stirrup leather and that comes off the strip just underneath. So whilst it's still coming from the top of the butt and the strong leather, it is one row underneath the previous stirrup leather. So, and also when you buy stirrup leathers from the shop, then they've been mass produced, you might have had one that's come from the top and one that's come from the middle. Stirrup leathers are very rarely made from the bottom of the butt, because that skin is so thin there, it's not any good and it stretches, but some very cheap stirrup leathers are made from that. So when you see a pair of stirrup leathers in your tack shop that are £6, or you see another pair for £40 and you think they look exactly the same, the chances are actually the £40 ones have been made from higher up the butt, the more expensive leather, and the cheaper ones have been made lower down the butt, the cheaper leather, and therefore not so strong for starters, but also much more stretch in them. They're there, that tummy area where the cow gets pregnant and her tummy stretches, so it's much thinner leather down there, and it's not recommended to have stirrup leathers made from that at all. The very bottom of the butt, the very thin leather, is reserved for things like keepers and anything that doesn't require any kind of strength about it. To recap that little bit, your stirrup leathers are made out of leather, which is made out of skin, and skin stretches, and depending on where on the butt your stirrup leather came from, it might have slightly more stretch than the other one, which is why some people, especially the cheaper makes, get a pair of stirrup leathers and within a month or two, one of them has stretched significantly. Now, I often go to a saddle fitting and I'll say to a rider, one of your stirrup leathers is longer than the other, and they look under their leg and they go, no, they're both on hole 12. But you can clearly see that one is about 3 holes different than the other. And that can happen in a matter of months with the cheaper leathers. It can happen over a longer period of time with the more expensive leathers. Again, because the more expensive leathers tend to be made from the thicker butt, the more expensive leather, and the cheaper leathers made from the thinner butt, the more stretchy and the slightly weaker leather. So when you go into that shop and you look at 2 sets of leathers that look exactly the same and you can't see a difference apart from one has got a much bigger price tag, please don't think that it's just that company making money because of their name. Often, not always, but often, it's because it's from a better part of the butt. So it's a better leather, so it's going to stretch much less. I have a pair of stirrup leathers that I've had for 30 years and they barely worn. They're really good thick and they're buffalo leather, and buffalo leather is very thick. Equally, I see people in saddle fittings that have bought, the leather still looks brand new and they've stretched. So there really is a huge difference in the quality of leather used in stirrup leathers, and you should go for the best ones that you can. Next up, how to check your stirrup leathers properly. So we've all been in a riding lesson where we've had our teacher say to us, trot towards me, and they look at your stirrup leathers to see if they're even, and they're like, oh, put your left one down a bit, put your right one up a bit, whatever. That isn't actually a very good way of checking stirrup leathers, because I see so many riders who ride slightly unevenly, like they lift one hip up a little bit more than the other, which lifts their foot a little bit more, or people that have had ankle or knee injuries, sometimes their leg will turn out more, or their leg will come away from the horse a little bit more. So for example, if someone's riding along with their feet in the stirrups like this and it looks nice and even, actually if they've got a problem with their knee or something and their leg comes out, that stirrup leather hasn't changed length, but it looks higher because their foot is sitting at a different angle. So when your instructor is like that, shorter your left one, lower your right one, sometimes what they're seeing is the way that your leg sits on the saddle more than how long your actual leathers are. So personally, I think the best way to check them is to take them off your saddle to check. So you can do this when you clean your tack, or you can just do this every now and again, but it is something that you should do fairly regularly to make sure that your stirrup leathers are even. And remember that when they stretch so gradually that sometimes you don't notice it stretching, because it happens so gradually and you just end up getting used to riding unevenly. And actually when you then even your stirrup leathers up, you feel like it's shortened, but it hasn't. It's just because you've got so used to riding unevenly. So I'll show you how I personally check stirrup leathers and how I tell people when I go to saddle fittings how to check their stirrup leathers. So the way that I check stirrup leathers is I take the stirrup leathers off the saddle. So here I am, I've taken my son's stirrup leathers off the saddle. My cat's come to join us. And I find a flat surface. Unfortunately, we don't have one of them because I'm on grass here. But imagine I'm on, for example, concrete. And you put the stirrup leathers down, you put the stirrups down on the hard surface like that, and you put your fingers in here where the stirrup bars would be and you pull upwards. And what you want to see is that these, and make sure you're pulling up perpendicular to the ground so they're nice and straight, you want to see that your fingers are even. Like that. That is how you check if your stirrup leathers are even. So, you've checked your stirrup leathers, you've put your feet in them, you've pulled up, you've checked your fingers are nice and even. Now what? If they're even, yay! Give yourself a pat on the back, carry on. If they're uneven, you may need to tweak them. The problem being that sometimes the holes in stirrup leathers are so far apart that when you put one upper hole, you end up making yourself uneven the other way. So you can get something called half-hole stirrup leathers, and they're quite good because they have like a double the amount of holes in them, so you can really get that right length that you're looking for. Equally, if you need to punch a hole in them, please, feel free to punch holes in leathers. That's fine, but make sure you do it with a proper hole punch, and make sure you do it with an oval-shaped punch. Because if you look at your stirrup leathers, they don't have a round hole in them. They have an oval-shaped hole in them. If you do them with a round hole, it can be quite difficult to get the stirrup leather up and down, so do them with an oval shaped hole. But instead of all of that, what you can do is you can get non-stretch stirrup leathers. So if you've checked your stirrup leathers and they're really uneven, maybe it's time to get a new pair of stirrup leathers. In my next video, we're going to look at the different types of stirrup leathers. So we're going to look at the non-stretch leathers, we're going to look at plain leathers, and we're going to look at the T-bar leathers, which are quite popular at the moment as well. I can show you all three of them because, as it happens, my son has the non-stretch, my daughter has the normal leather, and I have the T-bar leathers. So I can talk you through all of them whilst on lockdown, no problem. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was useful. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and even comment below if you have any ideas for future videos. It's been lovely speaking to you. Have a great day.